If you're eating clean, exercising consistently, doing all the things you've been told to do, and still carrying that belly fat, your body is not confused. It is actually responding to certain signals that are keeping it stuck in place. The title of today's video is How to Lose Stubborn Visceral Fat Fast with Zero Cortisol. I'm Dr. Rosemarie, a doctor of health psychology and cortisol specialist, and in this video, I'm going to explain what visceral fat actually is, why it forms, and why it's so difficult to remove, and what has to change for your body to finally let it go. So let's get into it. What is visceral fat? Visceral fat is the most dangerous fat in the body. It is not the fat you see in the mirror, and it's not the fat that you can pinch. Visceral fat is stored deep inside the abdominal cavity. It wraps itself around your vital organs like your intestines, and visceral fat, unlike other fat, behaves like an organ. It releases inflammatory compounds into your bloodstream. It interferes with insulin signaling, and it raises the risk of disease. And of course, that's important because inflammation is at the root of most chronic illnesses. Now, here's the part that a lot of people don't get. Visceral fat exists for a reason, and from an evolutionary standpoint, this fat exists for survival. When the brain perceives a threat, whether that threat is physical, emotional, metabolic, or environmental, it signals the body to store energy in a location that allows for rapid access. It is stored where it is because the body believes it may need fast access to energy. When the brain is sensing threat because of poor sleep or unstable blood sugar, high stress, or just too much demand, it prepares for survival. And the safest place to store emergency fuel is close to the organs that keep you alive. That's why visceral fat forms in the abdomen. Now, once you understand that visceral fat is a safety response, the strategy to lose it shifts. We can stop forcing fat loss with things like extreme dieting and start removing the signals that cause your body to hold on to it. Download my How to Calm Cortisol guide for ways that your body can get out of that protective state and feel safe again. Okay, so let's go on. Visceral fat is often called stubborn, but it's not really stubborn. It's just that your body's not willing to part with it because your body considers it a backup reserve of energy. And as long as your body believes it may need those backup reserves, it's not going to release it. So the real question becomes, which signals are telling your body that it still needs it? Here we go. Poor sleep, rising inflammation, cortisol, and insulin are some of the fastest ways to build visceral fat. When your sleep is short and light and inconsistent, inflammation rises. And inflammation is a stress signal. When inflammation rises, cortisol rises as well. Cortisol is your primary stress hormone. It regulates blood sugar, blood pressure, metabolism, and your stress response. Cortisol is important and necessary. Your body needs it. The problem isn't cortisol. The problem is when cortisol stays elevated. Now, when cortisol stays elevated, the body behaves as if it's experiencing present danger. When cortisol rises, it tells your liver to produce glucose internally. This is a process called gluconeogenesis, and it triggers insulin release. It's critical for you to understand this because even if you're not overeating, cortisol can keep insulin levels elevated, and insulin's job is fat storage. So now you have high cortisol, you've got high insulin, both at the same time. And when cortisol and insulin are high at the same time, the body enters what's called survival mode. In survival mode, fat loss is considered not safe, especially visceral fat. So you can start to see how this has very little to do with discipline or willpower. This is a hormone signaling issue. And what I mean by signaling is the ongoing communication between your brain, your hormones, your tissues about how to use energy. Your brain is consistently asking whether energy is coming reliably on time. Does it need more energy? And the hormones carry that message to your organs and tissues, and your fat responds based on what it's being told. Your gut, for example, can signal the brain to store fat instead of burn fat when your body's in survival mode. And the form of energy that gets stored under those conditions is visceral fat. This happens even if you're eating clean, even if you're exercising, even if your calories aren't excessive. As long as your cortisol and insulin stay elevated together, visceral fat is going to persist. Lowering insulin only works if cortisol stays low. That's where the zero cortisol comes in. Insulin is a primary fat storage hormone, and visceral fat is highly sensitive to it. Forcing insulin to stay low aggressively through restrictive dieting or overexercising raises cortisol. And when insulin is allowed to fall naturally and calmly, then fat burning becomes possible. When insulin drops under duress, cortisol rises and fat storage persists. So the goal is to have predictable insulin lowering without triggering the stress response from cortisol. Now hear this. Fats burning is going to happen better when insulin comes down calmly and cortisol stays regulated. Visceral fat will become more accessible, meaning the body will now be able to access visceral fat for energy instead of keeping it locked away in reserve. This is a big turning point where fat loss can finally start to happen. Now you might be wondering, but why doesn't the body just use visceral fat for fuel? When your body needs energy, it does not go straight to stored fat. It uses what's easiest first, and that's the food that you just ate. Every time you eat, insulin rises. And as long as insulin is elevated, stored fat is not being used. If you eat frequently, even high quality food, insulin will never drop low enough for fat to be accessed. So visceral fat stays stored, but never used. It's just not accessible as a fuel source. This is why people can be disciplined, they can be consistent, and still see no change whatsoever in belly fat. Cortisol was never meant to stay high all day. It should be highest in the morning and lowest at night. But modern life disrupts that rhythm. We live in an environment where there's a lot of mental load, a lot of emotional stress. There's constant stimulation. People are using caffeine, poor sleep, overtraining. All of these things keep cortisol elevated. And when cortisol is elevated, the body behaves as if danger is ongoing. In that state, fat loss is just not a priority. And people experience this as waking up tired, sugar cravings, weight gain, mood swings, poor sleep, low quality of life. This is why cortisol has become such a big deal, a central issue, especially after 40. Now, here's why the popular eat less, move more stops working and is often the worst advice for visceral fat. This is where most people get stuck. They gain weight, so they're told to eat less and exercise more. But that advice used to work. It doesn't work anymore, especially after 40. When you eat very little and exercise a lot, your body doesn't see discipline, it just sees danger. From the body's point of view, two things are happening at the same time. One, you're using a lot of energy, and two, you're not bringing in much energy. And that combination sends a simple message to your brain: warning, food is scarce. We need to conserve. So your body turns on its stress response to protect you. Your stress hormone, cortisol, rises to make sure you have enough fuel to function. It does this by making glucose inside your body, even if you haven't eaten. And that keeps you functioning, but it also keeps your body in protection mode. When food is low, your body has to get fuel from somewhere. Muscle costs the body more energy to maintain than fat, which is why losing muscle slows metabolism so quickly. Muscle is also easy to break down, so your body uses it first. Visceral fat, on the other hand, is kept because it's fast energy, It's stored near your organs, so the body makes a trade. We're going to let go of muscle. We're going to hold on to belly fat. This is not a mistake. It's a survival decision. So let's take a look at what happens to your hormones after 40. Hormonal changes after 40 just amplify this entire process. Estrogen, progesterone, testosterone decline. Earlier in life, these same hormones helped to keep cortisol calm, but now that they're declining, after 40, that buffering effect weakens. Cortisol rises more easily. Recovery takes longer. Muscle is lost faster. The same hormones, but a very different response. This is why what used to work stops working. Remember to download my Calm Cortisol Chaos Guide. I'll link it for you in the comments. It's in the description. Download it so that you can see the exact steps that your body needs to calm the stress response. Let's talk about why timing and rhythm matter more than intensity. See, our bodies work on a rhythm. Cortisol has a rhythm. Insulin has a rhythm. For example, cortisol is highest in the morning and falls at night. If stress raises cortisol at night, both insulin and cortisol are elevated, and now you've got fat storage. Regular timing, daily rhythm means eating, sleeping, moving at roughly the same time each day, so your body can predict what's coming. And when patterns are predictable, the body does not prepare for emergency. Your body is now ready to let go of those excess energy reserves. And that is where visceral fat becomes usable for fuel. So here's what progress actually looks like. Visceral fat does not start on the scale. It starts with having deeper sleep. You'll see a smaller waist. You'll have steadier energy, less inflammation. When cortisol normalizes and insulin is regulated without strain, stored visceral fat becomes accessible. And when it becomes accessible, belly fat finally starts to fall. Visceral fat did not get there randomly. It's not going to leave either through force. But once you understand why it formed and what your body needs in order to let it go, the process becomes logical instead of frustrating. That's when things finally change. Now that you know how to lose visceral fat quickly using zero cortisol, you might be wanting to learn 5 warning signs of high cortisol. But how do you do that? Well, it all starts by watching this video next here, because when you pair what you just learned with what's in this video, it's going to be a lot more powerful. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.